Okay, so welcome. My name is Chris Kim. I'm the Choi Family Director of Instrumental Activities at Occidental College. I'm also the orchestra conductor here at Occidental, and I also coordinate chamber music, teach conducting, and I also teach ear training for the music majors here. So quickly, a few things about myself. I was born in South Korea, but I immigrated to the US when I was 12 years old. I started a few instruments like piano and cello, but failed pretty miserably on them. And then I ended up majoring in oboe performance at Northwestern University. And I was also a music ed major. So after Northwestern, I was an instrumental teacher in the public schools for 2 years. And then I returned to school at the University of Michigan to get my training as a conductor. After that, I worked as an assistant conductor in New Orleans with the Louisiana Philharmonic for 2 seasons. And then after that, I spent quite a few years in Boston working at Tufts University, Harvard University, and then I had a position at Cornell University for 17 years. And then now I'm in Los Angeles here at Occidental College. My better half is a professor of composition at UCLA. So for about 3 years, I was commuting between upstate New York and Los Angeles. So I'm very happy to be based in Los Angeles with my family now. I've been at Occidental College. This is my fourth year. So next year it'll be my fifth year at Occidental College. And I'm really blessed to be in this environment, this liberal arts college environment. So that's a brief introduction of myself. Let me share my screen with you so I can show you a few things. And while I do that, may I assign somebody to be sort of a so you can let people into the chat room? Can anybody volunteer? Raise your hand. Okay, so then I'll keep doing it myself. Thank you, Roygo. So I'll make you a co-host, and if you could just keep track of people who are coming in late and let them in, so that while I'm sharing screen,
Sure.
I'm not interrupted. Thank you. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. Okay, so a few things. I'm going to create a link at the end, so you have all these links. So don't worry about copying and pasting them. I'll send it to you in the chat at the end of the session. So I wanted to show you a few things around the music department. A few years ago, the Choi family made it possible for us to have this beautiful production center. So what used to be the old library downstairs in Booth Hall is now the Choi Family Production Center. It's really a wonderful production center that we are able to have recording sessions, and so we teach Pro Tools, recording techniques, and our production major has been really exploding. So now, when this was first built, we had 4 production majors. This year, we're going to graduate about 18 production majors. So it's a really wonderful facility. So you can learn more about that later and read more about it. We also had funding to be able to create a new percussion studio. When I arrived, the percussion studio was literally in one office space, and it was sort of a poster child for what a percussion studio should not be. So now we have this wonderful space where lessons are taught in percussion. We also have an amazing teacher, Yuri Inu, who's our classical percussionist. We also have a drum set teacher, James Tate, who is really an amazing drummer. He's played with, you think of a band, he's played with them on tour. So our students are able to take both classical percussion lessons and also drum set lessons. So you can read more about the percussion space. We also have a student, one of the things that on campus that has been really exploding is students forming bands. So after a long while, they now finally have a band space, practice space. And it's sort of run in conjunction with KOXI, which is the radio station run by students. But Matan and Claire, who are students, Matan is a production major. Claire's a non-major, but they are really heading up this effort. It just opened up this year. So you can sign up to have a band practice in the space. Here's a page for all of our wonderful applied faculty. So our string faculty are actually all members of the LA Phil. So Arusiak, Ted, Jinshan, Michael, and Gloria. They're really wonderful, and so they teach our applied our students, both major and non-major students, but also they coach chamber music as well. A lot of our, and we also have a wonderful keyboard faculty: Galina, Junko, Dina, Kathleen, and Vicky Ray. Vicky Ray is really the contemporary music pianist in the Los Angeles area, so we're very lucky to have her. She just joined our faculty last year. Kathleen also joined our faculty as a jazz piano instructor last year. Our jazz program has gone through a real growth lately. Let me just skip over to our Steve Gregory is our rock guitar instructor. Reiner is our classical and jazz instructor. Ron is our for guitar, and we have many new faculty. Navarro is our trombone instructor. He does jazz and classical. Jay Jennings is part of Snarky Puppy. I don't know if you know that group. Look it up on YouTube. He's our new trumpet teacher in jazz and classical. Daniel Rodham is also this is his second year. He's our saxophone teacher. So we have many, and here's Jamie Tate, who's our drum set instructor. We hired Jonathan Richards, who's our director of jazz here. And he's been really growing the jazz program. And he's a wonderful artist. And he is connected really into the Los Angeles music scene. So one of the amazing thing about being in Los Angeles, you have access to the city of Los Angeles. But Occidental itself is also you're guaranteed 4-year residential access to the dorms. So it's a really unique place in which you have a protected space, but also you have access to the city of Los Angeles. If you look at many other liberal arts college situations, they're out in the boondocks. When I was looking at schools, I visited Oberlin, and it was wonderful. I loved the faculty, but I couldn't imagine spending 4 years in a 2 traffic light town. So if you're from Oberlin, I apologize. I have many colleagues who teach at Oberlin, and I think it's a wonderful institution. But as a young person, I wanted access to a larger city. So that determined my choice. I chose Northwestern because it was right next to Chicago, and having Chicago, like a big city like Chicago, as a resource was a real big plus for me. So when you're thinking about where to go for the next 4 years, one of the things you want to really think about is what the environment is that you're going to be spending 4 years in. Is it going to be a place in which you have access to cultural institutions? Is it going to be a place where you have to, or is it going to be a place where you want to really just focus on studying? So these are things you have to consider. Another thing that I want to sort of preemptively have is a discussion about what a music department in a liberal arts setting means. I'm not sure whether many of you know a difference between a school of music and a department of music. We are a department of music in a liberal arts college. So I went to Northwestern. That had a school of music. So that means a few things. One, mostly the music majors at Northwestern, where there's a school of music, they're getting a degree in BM, Bachelor of Music degree. So most of them are geared towards performance. Whereas in a liberal arts setting like ours at Occidental, you are getting a Bachelor of Arts degree. And their concentration within that music degree, so it can be a production concentration, composition, performance, history, but there tends to be a different sort of students who major in music in a liberal arts setting. Also, a big difference is that in places that have a school of music, so if you're a bassoonist, for example, I had a friend who I went to, I spent 3 years in the New York Youth Symphony together. And he and I went to Northwestern together. I was a music major. He was not a music. He was an engineering major. And so when he wanted to play in the orchestra, and in fact, he and I both auditioned. We both got in as freshmen, which was kind of a big deal. And then the bassoon teacher said, "Wait, who's this person? I don't know this. This is not my student." And then basically he was denied entrance into the orchestra, even though he had won the spot on the audition because he was not a music major. So in a school of music situation, there tends to be walls because they're serving the music majors. So you want to make sure that wherever you're choosing, you are choosing a place that's going to allow you to pursue your interest in the way that you want to do, right? One of the things that you might want to consider is, as a non-major, how much of the music department or school of music am I able to participate? Am I able to take lessons with the principal teachers? Am I able to participate in the large ensemble? So in most school of music, there's a wall where if you're not a music major, you can't take part in those activities. At Occidental, there is no such wall. We have, out of about 2,000 students, about 600 students participating in the music department offerings of lessons, chamber music, large ensembles such as orchestra and jazz ensemble, African drumming, and choral programs, choral ensembles. So there is no bar, a wall that you cannot take part in as a non-major. There are a few classes that are harder to get into as a non-major. So for example, the beautiful production center that I showed you, a lot of the classes that we offer in those classes, like Pro Tools and recording techniques, those are smaller classes. So the production students who are production majors will get preference in those classes. And many times, if you're not a music major and not a production major, it's really hard to get into those classes. But in terms of large ensemble lessons, those are accessible by non-majors as well as majors. All right. So I've talked quite a bit now, and what I'll do is, if you could either raise your hand or put it into the chat, your question that you wanted to ask. I'm happy to be a resource for you and answer them. And I'm sure many of the students who will be seeing this session as an archive video later on may have the same questions. So it's up to you to ask all the questions that need to be asked. Okay. All right. So fire away the questions or raise your hand. Wait, I'm going to try to keep eye on the chat as well. There we go. Okay, so question number one from Emily. Is there a chamber music program? Yes, there is. There's a very vibrant chamber music program. Each semester, I'll coordinate about 4 to 6 chamber groups. So this semester, we have a piano quintet, a cello trio, a flute piano duo, a flute violin cello trio, and a viola and violin duo. That's going to perform on April 21st. So they've been rehearsing twice a week, 1 hour with the coach, either myself or one of the applied faculty. And then they rehearse once on their own. And then they'll give a program. And what's also nice is our composers, composition majors, are paired as a resident composer with each of the chamber groups, and they're assigned to write a piece for that group. So they'll premiere sort of a traditional piece and a new work by a student composer. All right, I'm going to try to catch up with the questions. All right, so are there practice places and private lessons available to singers? Absolutely. If you go to the applied faculty site, we have many instructors who are voice instructors. So you're able to take lessons with them as well. And also, the large ensemble choral programs also offers a lesson scholarship. So if you're part of the choir, then you're also eligible for lesson scholarships, instrumental students as well. Yes, there are practice rooms. We are in the process of trying to secure funding to build a practice room wing. Currently, we have 7 practice rooms, plus the percussion studio practice room space. And then there's plans to open up a practice wing, which will have additional practice room spaces. Okay, All right, next question. Could you talk a little bit about composition or film scoring? Yeah, so Adam Schoenberg is our head of composition, and so in the document I'll send at the end, I'll list him as a contact resource. Our composition program is quite vibrant, and we've been having increasing number of undergraduate composition students, and they study with Adam, and oftentimes I'll coordinate with them. So each semester there's a composers forum in which professional musicians are hired to play the works by the undergraduate composers. I also program for every orchestra concert. There's a student composer's work that's featured on each of those programs. So every orchestra concert will feature a student composer. And as I said before, the chamber music program also pairs up chamber groups with composers. But there are plenty of other opportunities to write on campus for different groups. All right. Are ensemble studies required to music majors? Yeah, I'll send out a link for the music major requirement. I believe the music major requirement is you need to have two semesters of ensemble requirement. Our philosophy is that rather than if I see you all 4 years in orchestra and you don't do anything else, that's sort of a fail. So we want you to be a well-versed, musician with a lot of variety of experiences. But the large ensemble requirement for music majors is 2 semesters. Okay. Can we access music internship opportunities if we're not music majors? That's a good question. Our music internship, and we have a lot of them because a lot of our alumni work in the industry here in Los Angeles. So they're constantly coming to us offering paid internship opportunities for our music majors. So we'll sort of refer those opportunities to the music majors first. If you're not a music major, yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but my guess is it's probably by the time all the music majors pass on an opportunity, you probably won't be able to take advantage of that if you're not a music major. So that's sort of a special thing. It's not like we get a lot of music internship sort of opportunities come our way. So those are given to the music majors first. All right. Alessandra asks, do you organize concerts for students to perform? What groups perform and how often do bands and ensembles perform outside of school? So if you're talking about chamber groups, that if you're forming a group that and not taking the chamber music course, which is 129, then we don't. Sometimes we do have a MOFA, which is a music on a Friday afternoon series. So for example, this afternoon, we have 3 juniors who are giving a junior recital. So they're having their dress rehearsal and I'm giving them comments and then they'll give the junior recital. But those are all music majors. If you're not a music major, best way to do that is to join the chamber music class of 129, so you can be programmed on the chamber music concert. If you're talking about jazz ensembles, the jazz ensemble members do a lot of performances around campus on top of the main jazz concert, which happens once a semester. There's also a jazz combo program, so that's another way to have sort of a band if you're meaning a non-classical situation. There are also the new band practice room space, which is the sort of rock band situations. They'll even do sort of matchmaking for musicians. So if somebody needs a bassist, they'll put out a call for a bass player. All right. Please talk about the jazz program, research in music, traveling abroad in the music department. Okay, that's like 4 questions in one. So first I'll talk about the jazz program. Jonathan Richards is our director of jazz, and he's really the best person to get in touch with to ask about the jazz program. So the jazz ensemble performs once a semester as the big band. He also has 2 jazz combos who also program the same program, and they rehearse on Monday nights. And in the fall, Jonathan is also offering jazz improv as another class that you can take. So that's jazz. Research in music. So as a music major, all of the students who are majors, they have to present a senior comp. So we have one student who's a cellist and her topic is she found these manuscript of Franz Liszt in the Huntington Library. So she's going to present a paper on those pieces, and then I'm going to coordinate with her and presenting those works with the orchestra. Traveling abroad in the music department. The Glee Club just went on tour. They were supposed to go to Italy, but because of the pandemic, that didn't happen. So they did a Southwest tour instead. So I believe the Glee Club tours every winter, and the orchestra is planning to tour internationally in 2 years. Okay. All right. Are these practice rooms usually available? What if I'm planning on practicing every day? So we have an online reservation system. So now we have 600 students who are trying to access, okay, so not all 600 students are trying to access the practice room, because that includes students who are taking lessons, who are in large ensembles, taking music classes like history or theory. But the practice rooms are busy. And we are at our max capacity right now, so that's why the new practice room wing is really important that it get built. So once that is built, hopefully that'll make the lack of availability sort of better. Yeah. All right. Are there school instruments available to borrow? Yes and no. If you're a string bass player, then we have 4 string basses that you can rent. If you're a cellist, we have 5 cellos that Oxy owns. We also have 2 violas that people can borrow. And then we have a whole slew of instruments like bass clarinet, English horn, so auxiliary wind instruments. But for all the other instruments, then you're expected to have your own. But we also have a good relationship with a local instrument rental place here in Pasadena, and so you're able to access any instruments that you might need. All right. Are private voice lessons considered a credit class? Yes, they are. All of our applied classes, you can take it for 1 credit or 0 credit. All right. What is the local music scene like around Oxy? Venues, student bands at Oxy? Is it difficult to find a place to perform? So Oxy is based in Eagle Rock, and so in Eagle Rock we have a really vibrant rock music scene, and that's just right within walking distance of Oxy. So I know a lot of the bands, student bands, find venues to perform in around Oxy. If you have a car, then you have access to the whole city of Los Angeles. If you don't have a car, getting to gigs is a little tricky. A lot of our upperclassmen also sign up to be drivers. So Oxy owns the whole slew of vans. So I know a lot of the clubs use those vans to do outings into Los Angeles. All right. Can you still participate in the choir if you're not a music major? And if so, are you still able to receive scholarship for private lessons? Yes, to both. In fact, our large ensembles would not be able to function without the non-music majors. A lot of times people are surprised that their musical life can continue after high school. If you're at Northwestern or a place that's a school of music that limit the participation by non-majors, then it gets challenging. Although choral programs tend to be more open than instrumental ensembles, but at Oxy, our large ensemble programs, the choirs, the orchestras, the jazz band, we would not function without the participation of the non-music majors. So yes, you can still participate in choir if you're not a music major, as well as all the other ensembles. And you are able to receive a lesson scholarship for private lessons if you are in a large ensemble. All right. Okay. Also, is it difficult to become a DJ at KOXY? So I can refer you to Matan, who is actually a DJ. I believe that is not that difficult. KOXY is completely student run. They run I don't know whether it's 24 hours. So that I would have to double check, but I can give you a contact info to Matan, who is a DJ at KOXY and also a music major in production here at Oxy. All right. Other than the end of the semester recital, what other opportunities do composers get to do their work performed? So a lot of times, composers are constantly finding ways to get their work performed. Oftentimes, Adam will hire a trio or a brass quintet or a string quartet to do readings. I mentioned the resident composer for the orchestra for each concert, the resident composer program for the chamber music program. I know Desiree Lover too, who's our director of choral, glee club, and choirs. She'll often commission a student to write a piece for the choirs. So it's really, and I know there's a student, Sarah Sturdvant, who's a violinist and a singer. She's writing a musical that's going to be done next year. So there are a lot of opportunities for composers to write for different groups. All right. Can we double major in music in another subject? Yeah. In fact, we have quite a bit of double majors. It's a bit of juggling act that you have to do because you're going to have to jump through two sets of hoops, basically, music major requirements and whatever else major that you are. But it's really possible, and the environment is one that is welcoming and allows you to do so. But that does make things a little tricky. You have to do a lot more research. You have to figure out what course is offered, because not every course is offered every semester in either departments, right? Studying abroad is probably out of the question if you want to do a double major. So that's a big sort of opportunity that you'll be missing out on. I was a double major, and I didn't know. No one told me that I could not go do study abroad my junior year if I was a double major. If I knew that, I might not have chosen the double degree program. All right. Okay. I wanted to ask this too. If so, how many of music major students are double major students? So I think, let's see, Chester, Jasper. It's a handful. So I think there are about maybe 6 to 7 music majors who are double major. So yeah. My take on the double major, and this is coming from a person who did double majoring myself. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish my undergraduate experience was different. Because I ended up having basically 2 sets of hoops to jump through, and I ended up spending a lot of time taking classes I really had no interest taking, but I had to because those are the requirements for the 2 of my majors. And so there were a lot of classes and courses that I would have taken, but I couldn't because I had 2 sets of requirements that I had to go through. So I don't really find value in the double major. I think you're all going to be in a time when doing one thing well is going to be better than 2 things sort of muddling, because it's just time. Because if you have to do many things at a surface level rather than a few things at a deeper level, I think for me, a collegiate experience that is as much as possible going deep is more valued. Yeah, that would be my advice. All right. Does Oxy host resident musicians, specifically in jazz? Yeah. So when you say resident musicians, so for example, when I was at Cornell, we had this AD White House professor program for which Wynton Marsalis came to campus and stayed on campus for a week at a time over a 4-year period because he works in New York City. And so it wasn't easy for him to hop on over a 4.5-hour drive up to Ithaca. Whereas Los Angeles, Jonathan is bringing in constantly people who are active in the music scene. So we actually have access to an amazing array of musicians. I mean, just our chamber music program, all of our applied string faculty are members of the LA Phil. I mean, if you're a cellist or violist or violinist, you're taking lessons with a member of the LFL as a non-music major, and then you're being coached by them in a chamber music piece as a non-major. I mean, name a place that you can do that easily. There are not many. So in terms of resident musician, yeah, sometimes we'll bring in a big guest. We have the Hume Fund to bring in a big artist. Those kinds of guests will come by once in a while, but oftentimes we're bringing in guests all the time. All right, what level of repertoire does the symphony orchestra play? So it's a chamber music chamber orchestra size. We have about 45 students in the orchestra, so it's a challenge for us to play anything really big. But we have done a few movements of Mahler's Fourth Symphony. But a lot of times I'm having to kind of rearrange things to fit our instrumentation. This year we have a strange instrumentation of having alto sax and tenor sax and euphonium who want to be in the orchestra. So rather than saying, well, I can't find pieces for that, I'll just arrange things so that we can include those instruments. Yeah. Okay, coming back to the double major, will doubling in something else take time away from my music classes? So, for example, there's a student, Jasbird, who is a double major, and his senior comp conflicts with conducting that I'm going to teach in the fall. So he asked if conducting will be offered in a different time in next time it's offered, and it's not. So he's basically having to choose between his senior comp and conducting. So he's given the choice of either doing an independent study with me and making up that conducting portion. Although, because he's a jazz guitar performance major, so all of our performance majors have to take conducting. So he'll either have to take an independent study with me or do a summer study with me. So there's ways to make up for classes that you're missing. Yeah, I mean, you are going to come into conflict sometimes, but oftentimes we're able to make a workaround. All right, next question. How would you describe the relationship between music professors and students? I think it's best to ask our students. So I'll also leave a few emails of our students so you can ask them yourselves. You know, what I tell you is sort of hearsay, and besides, it's not really a correct picture because my perception and the student perception is going to be different. I find the students and I have a good relationship, working relationship. So for example, Chester, who is a saxophonist who's playing in the jazz ensemble and the orchestra, he and Leslie, another saxophonist, was commissioned to write a huge choral orchestral jazz band piece for the inauguration of our new president, Harry Elam. And so that piece, because we wanted something that that's performed by not just the orchestra, but all together, jazz band, choir, and orchestra. And so they wrote this piece, and it was played at the president's inauguration ceremonies. So there are sort of standout examples like that. There are composers who work closely with me through the chamber music residence program and the orchestra. Tim Shortell, who's a composition and pianist, he did a transcription, a beautiful transcription of Margaret Bonds' Troubled Waters. So he was a soloist as well on that piece. So that collaboration was really fruitful. Right now, one of the percussionists, G, she wrote a piece for orchestra and percussion section. So she's working with me to realize that piece. Yeah. Okay. So I'll also list our students, and so you can contact them. I think most of you, at least instrumentalists, I sent you an email with an apply faculty and a member of the orchestra. So you're welcome to contact them. If you didn't get an email from me because you're a vocalist, then I would really encourage you to connect with Desiree Lover too. She's an amazing choral director and voice teacher and musician, and so she is full of information. And she's actually been longer here at Occidental than myself, So she has a lot more resources. If you're a production person who has an interest in production, Max Foreman is your contact point. So I'll list all of those in the link that I'll send you. All right. Will there be assessment to assess the freshman students' core music skills and theory so that they don't repeat the theory that they know in class? Yeah, there will be a music theory assessment test in the fall during orientation week. So you want to take that if you want. There's also going to be a Pro Tools assessment exam, and all instrumentalists and vocalists audition for they're usually a lesson scholarship audition. So that doubles as your ensemble audition. So look for that. That usually happens Sunday of orientation week. All right. Do students often learn to play new instruments at Oxy? Yes. So certain instruments, like there's a keyboard class. So Dina teaches beginning keyboard instruments. I think 4 of our guitar teachers have taken on sort of a beginner in the past, but sometimes their studios get really full. So in those cases, they sort of give preference to people who have experience on those instruments first, right? I think with Jamie on drum set, he had 16 students in a studio, so that sort of is like that. He puts a cap on 16. So if he's up at the cap, he's going to probably give preference to students who have had experience before. But I know that 3 of the students were percussionists but had not played drum set before. All right. If you pass the AP Music Theory exam, do you still need to test out of Theory 1? Yes, because that's just our policy. So, but if you got a 5 on the AP Music, then you should be able to pass out of that exam really easily. Did I get to the end? Okay. So I'll stay on as long as people want to stay on and ask questions. So I'll release you if you have to go to your next thing. Thank you for joining us for this session and asking those questions. And all of your questions were very helpful for everybody who will be signing on and watching this later. If you could just turn on your screens and wave goodbye, I appreciate you being here. Noah, good to see you. Matthew, good to see you. Miles, good to see you.
Thank you, Mr.
Origo, thank you for manning the stations. Brooke, good to see you. Samiksha, nice to see you. Patrick's mom, good to see you. All right, so I'll stay on if you have questions that you want to ask, but too shy to ask when there was a big group. So go ahead and ask. Yep. Thank you, Ava.